Good day, everyone. I'm pleased to welcome our CEO, Chris Dehring, into this space. He comes to Cricket West Indies with a plethora of experience in banking, in telecommunications, and in media. And we're just catching up with him to speak about his first 6 weeks in charge of our organization and how he plans to move forward in the sport of cricket. You're now about just over 6 weeks into your tenure here at Cricket West Indies as CEO. Tell me what has surprised you the most about your role so far.
Well, I think what most people in the region don't know, and I would have been probably one of the people probably closest to it, and I didn't know, was the kind of professional structure that has been put in place at Cricket West Indies. Everything from the offices to the quality of the young professionals that are now working with the organization, the size of the organization that is here in Antigua at the headquarters. My very onboarding experience, that coming into this corporate environment was on par with any that I've experienced with some of the biggest corporations in the world. So it's a testament to, I think, to the work that the board has done, to the prior CEOs that would have built this organization since I left it. So certainly this is not the Cricket West Indies that I would have left so many years ago.
You've mentioned in the past that West Indies cricket holds a special place in your heart. Take me back to a moment either in your early childhood, your early professional career, or even your sporting career that would have cemented this for you.
So there's so many memories that I associate. Some are subliminal, some are burnt into my very being. My father would have registered me as a member of Kingston Cricket Club at birth. So, my entire life I've been a member of a cricket club. I don't recall my earliest time actually seeing a cricket match, but there are certain things that are burnt, just etched in my memory. What my first earliest memory, which I had to deduce, was a cricket match. I remember I used to go down to Kingston Cricket Club. My father would take me there every cricket match and so on. And I don't remember the cricket that was being played, but because I'd be playing up, running up and down the steps and playing and having a good time. So I associated cricket with having a good time and, of course, getting to miss school. But there was one moment that I remember playing by the gates of Kingston Cricket Club where the players would walk out onto the field. And there was this incredible roar. And I looked up to see this tall, elegant man with his collar turned up, walking out onto the field with this incredible cacophony. And I remember getting goosebumps. Now, I didn't know who it was then, but I do also recall that my father had to cover my face with a wet handkerchief at some point, and I got sick and I had to miss school the following day from the tear gas. And so I deduce that that was the 1968 Test match, and that was Sir Gary Sobers. So, those are the sort of subliminal images that are just etched in my memory. I still see him to this day, this tall, elegant man walking out with his collar turned up, and the crowd just going absolutely berserk at Sabina Park. My next memory was, and which is when I started to consciously follow cricket. I was sitting down before a game, watching cricket, watching the bats cricket play, and I was, they were warming up in front of Kingston Cricket Club, and a batsman in warming up hit a ball over the fence and hit me on my shin. He came in, he's, got ice for me, took care of me, and I started to follow this youngster kind of thing. Was he everything he did because he would when he was batting, he would come in off the field and check up on me because he made me sit beside the players area, and he was felt so guilty. It turned out that was Lawrence Rowe. And he this is during making 214 on his test debut. And so I became a huge Rowe fan. I modeled myself after him, or tried to model myself. Everybody did back in those days. You try to model yourself after the great Yagga Rowe. And I became a massive fan. And today, everybody still calls me Yagga as a nickname because that was who I modeled myself after. And it was quite they took it as a joke, because I just walked like him. I held a bat like him, and my batting stance was like him. A lot of it was subconscious, probably, but I just absolutely idolized Lawrence Rowe. So those were some of the things that just made me fall in love with cricket. Now, I will tell you, I played both sports. football and cricket. And I can't tell you that cricket was one of my favorite sport to play. I played a lot more football. But the reality is that you always knew, no matter what your favorite sport was, the importance of West Indies cricket, which is almost different from cricket, the sport. West Indies cricket was just this special institution that you knew when it was happening. You knew the importance of it. You knew when we won or lost. Everybody, walked around with absolute smiles on their faces and joy, and when we won, and you knew when we lost. And there's so many funny anecdotes that would have occurred to me, or occurred that I would have seen through your life, that you just know that, hey, everybody's thinking the same thing, and it's West Indies cricket. You didn't have to say it. I remember an immigration man. I was walking up to immigration in Jamaica, and by that point, I was with Cricket West Indies, and there was a crowd in immigration in Jamaica, and we had won a test match. A particular player had not played, had been actually dropped. And I'm walking up to immigration, and the guy immigration looks up and stands up and says, "You see it? You see it? If you drop him, we must win." And everybody in the hall started laughing. It's like everybody knew what that immigration officer was talking about, without even him having to describe it. And you realize that, wow, sometimes you feel you're alone watching the sport, but you're not. Everybody cares. There's so many incidents. I remember one night, 1991 tour, West Indies, Australia, and you're watching on TV, and Courtney Walsh took that last wicket, and we won that match by 1 run. And I remember I'm in a townhouse complex, but you're watching by yourself, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I jumped up and started to shout when we won. And my wife is telling me, "Quiet down, you're going to wake the neighborhood." But as I quieted down, you realize the entire neighborhood was screaming, was shouting. And we all gathered in the courtyard of the townhouse complex and just had a celebratory party right then and there. So sometimes you think you're alone watching this thing, and when you realize that now everybody is still watching, you realize the importance of this sport.
Looking back at your experience during the 2007 ICC Cricket World Cup, what lessons would you have learned that you plan to apply to your current role at Cricket West Indies?
Wow, it was a mammoth undertaking. It was the first time we were ever hosting something of that magnitude, and people, I guess, talk about the upsides of these things, but the downsides, if you don't get it right, could be, catastrophic. And thankfully, we were able to deliver this first ever global sport event in the Caribbean. I think the biggest thing I've learned is to not get intimidated by the level of insularity we have in the region. And Cricket World Cup was an exceptional one, because here you had 9 countries hosting events in this event. And you were really supposed to be a single host, and other countries would have had the benefit of a single host, and therefore you can create a single marketing plan and a single way of presenting ourselves to the world. But in reality, we're not a single entity. And in fact, the visitor that would have gone to Barbados is the visitor Jamaica would not have gotten. And so we had meetings where countries didn't want to even share their marketing plans because you're in competition, which would not exist in a single host. So back then, it would have been very frustrating to try and get 9 countries moving in unison on everything. It really was very frustrating, because everybody, as you know, in the Caribbean is an expert, and that gets exacerbated by national boundaries. So every meeting was the same. And I still tell people I'm probably the only person in the history of the Caribbean to have regular meetings with 9 prime ministers, 9 ministers of finance, 9 attorney generals, 9 ministers of tourism, 9 police chiefs, 9 heads of customs. And we think about it, we've never had to do that before. And so you gain a perspective that is a maturity, I think, and an understanding that, hey, there's certain things that you can't do with. That's not always going to happen. The insularity, the national desire to and looking out for your own country, etc. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because competition fuels resources. It generates national pride. It's how do you walk between the raindrops? How do you capture the competitive element, the desire for Barbados to be regional champions, um, and everything that they want to do to create a regional champion as Barbados. But then how do you harness that to for the wider good? And so you have this competitive pull and these competitive tensions constantly that really can help to stimulate national resources for the greater good. And so you're always trying to walk between the raindrops. So I hope I've learned that lesson. And in fact, the fact that we had all these new stadiums built was part and parcel of that. Maybe we did a little bit of overbuilding in some places, but it was really pushed and generated by the desire for each country to put their best foot forward and not to be outdone by the next country in the Caribbean. So, in a sense, if I can use that microcosm and that lesson learned, how can we increase the level of national resources being put into their national teams to then hopefully we at the West Indies Cricket Board level can take the best of what is being produced. So that's what I'm hoping that we'll be able to accomplish.
More and more often, we see cricket competing with other sport and entertainment options for audience viewership and sponsorship dollars. How do you plan to increase the
Well, fan experience is paramount. And that fan experience is not just at the games themselves, but how they see it on television and how it is being explained to them on the streaming platforms and so on, and the various facilities that surround all sports now. Cricket in the Caribbean generally has tended to be looked on as a Caribbean focused entity when people talk about West Indies cricket. But we operate in a wider cricket industry, and that cricket industry operates in a wider sports industry. That sports industry operates in a wider entertainment industry. One of the things that Cricket World Cup and my tenure in various sports has allowed me to do is to kind of experience and see how the various sectors of the industry have developed. And so we need to employ everything that everybody else is doing. I'm not saying we're going to have the resources that everybody has, but one of the great things we've been able to do is there's a saying in Jamaica, turn your hand, make fashion. We will take what you have done in the first world, use with your multi-billion-dollar R&D and research budgets and so on, and we will create a Caribbean fashion from it. And I use cricket in the Caribbean as an example of that innovation. And I call that the ultimate level of innovation. Imitation, but we put our Caribbean twist on it. Use the sport of cricket itself. English, we didn't invent cricket. The English did. But we took it and played it in a manner that we created our own form of cricket, our own brand. They in the beginning, derogatorily called it Calypso cricket, the way we're beating the lead off the ball. It don't matter whether it's test cricket or not. We're here to score runs and entertain. So we also then formulated a unique way of celebrating the game off the field with music and entertainment and partying. That wasn't done anywhere else in the world. And so they took both brands, the fact how we played the game, which spawned the limited over cricket, because they were trying to formulate and make sure everybody played this entertaining form of cricket that the West Indies did naturally, which was why we won the first two World Cup. We were playing our normal game. We weren't doing anything exceptional for limited overs cricket. Everybody else had to revolutionize the way they played the game to suit what we were doing naturally. But then what we were also doing naturally off the field in partying and the music and so on started right here in Antigua by a Chicky, who really should, in the Hall of Fame of world cricket, he should probably be recognized. And they created things like T20. And so they packaged what has been our brand and made things like T20. So it shows that we can find ways to engage our fans in a way that is our way. Now there's technology, there's virtual reality where people can experience the sport using VR headsets and so on. There's different forms of electronic fan engagement with games and so on. We need to find now what is the party was back then. How did we get young people to cricket? music, party, entertainment, and so on. It was just a great an entertainment product as any other form of entertainment that was in existence at the time. We now need to see what the young people want and how do they enjoy their entertainment and adapt the sport to them.
Cricket has, for a long time, been a unifying force in the Caribbean. How do you plan to continue to enhance this while keeping Cricket West Indies as a legacy and a cultural brand?
Well, at the end of the day, the West Indies cricket, I know UAE might want to think of themselves at this as a Caribbean entity. But the truth is, when people talk about Caribbean institutions, West Indies institutions, the first name that's called is West Indies cricket. I support this brand. I support when I wear this logo through the airport, people want the shirt. People want a sweat top that I had on the other day and stripped me of it in the Antigua airport. So you know it is still a beloved institution. And it's a platform that we can utilize to accomplish so many other things across the Caribbean. Corporate entities in the Caribbean need to understand if they want to grow their market, they can use the platform of West Indies cricket. Governments understand that if they want to create this sense of unity and CARICOM initiatives and so on, you can use the brand of West Indies cricket. And so schools need to understand that, hey, civics, understanding of what is the Caribbean, because brutally frank, Jamaica is just so North America focused. It's beginning to lose some of that Caribbeanness. And what we need to do is to reintroduce the fact that, hey, you are still part of the Caribbean, and this is the national platform. As Sir Frank Worrell should be taught in civics, the importance of Clive Lloyd as one of the greatest leaders to ever emerge from this part of the world needs to be taught in our schools. These are our national heroes. And so we need to utilize Caribbean cricket, West Indies cricket, as that unifying platform. I think it still is. I think it's still a sleeping giant. That's one of the reasons I actually came back. I said, look, I see what's happening in the world of cricket. That this thing is just exploding commercially, and you see all the franchise leagues being developed across the world. What is happening in the United States is just mammoth. And we are the brand of this part of the world. And I'm determined that we're not going to be get left behind. We are still the brand. We still have this global cadre of people that worship West Indies cricket. And we need to utilize that, both here in the Caribbean, amongst ourselves, amongst our own countries, and internationally.
You've been described as an innovator and sometimes a disruptor. What sacred tenets of Cricket West Indies might need to be challenged for the greater good of the game?
I call myself the great imitator. And because I have been exposed around the world to all different types of sports, all different types of business, corporate world, sports world. I see what's out there, and then I try and implement what is out there in the Caribbean way. Sportsmax was no exception. Sportsmax was a direct copy of Sky Sports. I was a huge Sky Sports fan, and so I realized we didn't have a dedicated sports media in the Caribbean, so Sportsmax was spawned. The same with the investment bank when I started that. That was, investment banking was all the rage, and it seemed romantic. So we started the first investment bank in Jamaica. So those are all imitations, so I don't credit myself with being innovative. I'm an imitator. But what I do is to make sure that things are done. So I don't just talk about things. I will try it. And so I guess one of the great challenges you always have with an entity like West Indies Cricket, it was so precious. It's so precious to everybody, and I try and understand that. Change is always difficult, and to try new things in new ways. Remember, we're not just part of the Caribbean cricket, we're part of world cricket, but we're also part of the sports industry. And innovations in the sports industry tends to trickle down across sports. There's this whole strategy now in most world football called a high press. The high press started in hockey. 50 years ago. And so it started to filter into other sports, the high press. It then got into basketball and then now into football and so on. And it's almost as if it seems like, oh, it's such a new thing in football. It started 50 or 60 years ago in hockey as a strategy. Um, right, so we need to see what is the latest, greatest methodologies that people are employing to improve high performance. And it doesn't matter whether it's track and field, it doesn't matter whether it's football, it doesn't matter whether it's hockey, it doesn't matter NBA. We have to take the best and employ it into cricket. It's already starting in cricket in terms of the data management and the data um, um, usage that people are using to develop professional athletes. That is going to be probably my core focus. How do we implement and retool the process of creating a West Indies cricketer? Because we have the high athletic quotient in the region. What we don't have is the resources of other countries. So we're going to have to find ways to employ whatever resource, whatever technology and developmental processes that are out there now in the world of sports, tailor it to our own needs here in the Caribbean and our own budgets in the Caribbean and implement it. Because what the rest of the world doesn't have is our high athletic quotient. We just produce an inordinate amount of athletes, male and female, compared to the rest of the world as a percentage of the population. I always tell people the girls under 14 high school championship finals in Jamaica, all those girls in the final at under 14 level are going to be running times that will be the national record. It's 70% of the world's countries. And if you look across the Caribbean, you're going to find that kind of disparity where we play well above the global average in terms of athletic performance and athletic quotient. So what we need to do is to tap into that and make sure that we're maximizing our athletes. Not all those girls that are running at under 14 are going to go on to be Olympic athletes because only 3 girls are going to run for the Olympics for Jamaica in the 100 meter. Yet they're going to have another 200 who are running similar times. We need to pull those kids into the cricket production pipeline because those athletes are going to be athletes whether they're in track and field, football, cricket, tennis, golf. Doesn't matter. We need to pull them into the cricket production pipeline. Make sure there's an outlet or an inlet that pulls them into that production pipeline and then monitor that production pipeline. So if you ask me what's the biggest change, it's going to be that understanding that we cannot produce a professional cricketer today the same way we did 50 or 60 years ago. Um, my under 16, my high school's under 16 team won the national cricket championship a couple of years ago in Jamaica. I passed by and I watched those youngsters playing in the nets, and it occurred to me that they're practicing in the same way, in the same net that I would have practiced 50 years ago. It can't, you can't, that is all raw material that is we being wasted. We have to find a way to produce better raw material and not wait until we see them on the output as a under 19 player at the regional championship. That's almost too late to produce a professional cricketer now. So that's probably going to be the biggest challenge. How do we get everybody's mindset, territorial boards, coaches, um, development officers, governments to understand that the production pipeline needs a total retooling and make sure that we're competitive again at the international level.
Final question. West Indies dominated cricket in the 70s and 80s. Do you believe that we can get back that level of dominance? And if so, what's your timeline for making that happen?
There have been very few instances in world sport where a country that dominates a sport the way the West Indies did ever getting back there or ever having the opportunity of dominating a sport in the same way. Not in this global professional world where money talks, and if you look on the Brazil glory era in football between 1958 and let's say 1970, they dominated the world in football. Brazil has never got back there where they can dominate for a whole series of World Cups. So the sport itself has moved on. In the 70s and 80s, the commercial revenue gap between English and Indian cricket boards and the West Indies cricket boards was probably no more than 10 or 20 million US a year, which was minuscule. Our athletic quotient easily overcame that. By the time I joined Cricket West Indies, the West Indies Cricket Board, to set up the commercial operations of West Indies cricket, that commercial gap with England was 250 million pounds a year. So if you even extrapolate that over 10 years, one country is generating 2.5 billion and investing in their product, and one is getting zero. That's just one line item, by the way, domestic television rights. And you see how the two cricket products have gone. The gap today with an India commercial revenues is 3 billion. So let us be realistic about where we want to fit in the world of cricket. No, I'm not saying that gap is not insurmountable, because what they don't have is our athletic quotient. What they don't have is this innate natural abilities, and that's what we need to hone in on and make sure we maximize that talent with whatever we have, with the resources we can put into it. But we do know that it's going to be a huge challenge. My job is to retool this process so that the outcomes can be far better. Getting back to dominate the world of the 70s and 80s, I'm not going to promise that to anybody. But what we need to do collectively, it's not just Cricket West Indies. This is our sport. This was our glory that we need to return to. Is to make sure we're back there competitively. That when there's a one-day international World Cup, West Indies is always there and always has a chance to win. When there's a T20 World Cup, West Indies is always there, always has a chance to win. When we're playing a Test series, you know we're going to be competitive and people want to play against us. That is my objective.